So what was it at the beginning you guys were doing back when you were when you came on as employee number 13?
Palantir's earliest missions felt like a startup storming the Pentagon. Check this video out.
Well, it was really hard because none of us had worked in government. None of us had clearances. We would go to DC. We'd literally carry our Pelican case with a projector. I mean, talk about state of technology. You couldn't even rely on a projector being in the government conference room. You had to bring your own projector to make sure you could actually show the customers what you were building. And we were really eliciting feedback from them. Like, okay, I built this, and we don't know your workflow, but based on your reactions, I'm going to go away and code that night and come back tomorrow and show you something new. And we had to do all this kind of notionally to begin with on low side synthetic data until we got to a threshold of conviction. And that threshold of conviction, I mean, almost to the point, it started because of a renegade analyst. And I think she's been a prior guest of yours, actually, Sarah Adams.
No kidding.
Yeah, so Sarah Adams, so In-Q-Tel brought a fresh, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed cohort of CIA analysts out to the West Coast. We were maybe 20 people at the time. We were one of the stops along the way. And she saw the demo and she's like, I need this. Why don't we have this? In fact, I joined this organization because I thought I'd be having James Bond technology and somehow I have WordPerfect and Lotus Notes, and she organized a day on her own. I think she was like maybe like a GS-12, on her own. She organized a day of 3 meetings where more than 200 analysts came to see this thing. At some point, the deep state, the IT people got wind of this and came to this meeting trying to shut it down, trying to dampen the excitement. But they were, the analysts were just in revolt. Like, why can't we have a pilot? Why can't we try this out? And that broke the floodgates open for us. So years, I probably did 300 demonstrations and meetings trying to get a single pilot. And that one day she made it all happen.
It's moments like these that reveal the soul of Palantir, engineering solutions in real time, adapting overnight, and refusing to wait for permission to innovate. Even without security clearances, they found a way to stay close to the user and iterate fast. That kind of urgency, combined with a relentless commitment to mission, is what set Palantir apart from day one. It wasn't about building for the sake of tech. It was about solving problems no one else dared to touch, under immense pressure.
I'm gonna have to talk to her about that. She's been holding out on me. Wow. So you guys were in defense tech at the very beginning, and then it grew into all these other.
It was always about defense. I mean, I'm very happy we have a commercial business. It powers a lot of innovation, and frankly, a lot of what the things we learn in commercial, we're able to bring over to give the government decisive advantages. We're able to amortize the R&D. Ideas that BP or Avis have make the Army better. That's one way of thinking about it. But we really started because we cared about the government mission. And we honestly would not have built a commercial business except for the fact that the government was so slow and so hard that we were going to go broke if we just stuck by being purely a government company.
Wow. What was the pushback from when you're saying the deep state was trying to pipe it down a little bit?
A desire to build all this stuff themselves. We don't need this. We don't need these outsiders. They don't know our stuff. I'll reason by analogy. So I recently met someone who was in Kwajalein, and I think it was 2014 when SpaceX was launching their early rockets. And Elon was one launch. He had 3 failures, and he was one launch away from losing the whole business. And he said, I was there, and the SpaceX facility is right next to the Boeing facility. And you go to the SpaceX facility, and you compare it to the Boeing. The Boeing facility is like a clean room. You're wearing a bunny suit. It looks so sophisticated. SpaceX, it's open air, parts on a table, things are rusting, and you're just like, these guys are never going to make it. Like this, they don't know what they're doing. But you fundamentally misunderstood what was happening there. It's not where are they today? It's what's the first derivative? How quickly are they improving? How good is that team? And that is the world's best team, right? And look what's possible now. Like our launch capability is unmatched. Mm-hmm. And the price performance that Elon is able to deliver. When I was a kid growing up, shuttle, it used to cost $50,000 per kilogram to get to orbit. With Starship Heavy reuse, it'll be 10 to 20 bucks. It's just orders of magnitude difference, right? And I think there was something like that in the early days for us, which is, this seems like a joke. Who are these kids running around in shorts? I remember one early meeting I had in the Pentagon. I didn't wear a tie. I wore a suit, everything except for a tie. First 30 minutes of the meeting, I just got dressed down for how disrespectful it was to show up without a tie. Look, I always wear a tie now. I've learned my lesson, but I think we lost the plot. Like, the substance is the code, not the quality of my tie. It's the quality of the code.
Palantir's early struggle mirrors what we see in every disruptive tech story. Bold teams pushing against legacy systems that confuse tradition with capability. The obsession with dress codes over deliverables, that says everything. The focus should have been on code quality, product performance, and speed of learning. Instead, the system fixated on protocol. And yet, like Musk with rockets, they kept building until the results became undeniable.
Wow. Do you guys, even still to this day, but let's stick at the beginning right now. I mean, you've really disrupted, I feel like you've really disrupted the military industrial complex, the legacy companies, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, insert whoever. I mean, was there a lot of pushback from them?
There's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of kind of fake partnerships, like, hey, let's bring you in for some small, tiny amount of work share that will actually be zero. We don't really need you, is the vibe. But I would say, in fairness, when we first started, we thought the primes would be our big competitors. What I didn't realize is actually the government was our big competitor. When the way that the government's structured, you have these program offices and they have the perfect 5-year, 10-year plan. They kind of just want to lock in their plan. And we were a threat that disrupted all of their well-laid plans. Instead of adopting us, they wanted to reject us. And so if you really look at the early days of Palantir, all of our adoption was driven from the field back. So all of our attempts to get people in DC really interested in what we're doing, it was, in benefit of hindsight, was wasted time. Our first deployment was with 10th Group as they took over Siege of Sodef AP in Balad. And it's because the commander, the colonel, it's just like 3 days before deploying, he called us up. We had been showing him our software. He's like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't buy things. I'm a warfighter. I don't buy things. And 3 days before he going, he just had that feeling like, I need this. Like, if you guys come, drive to Fort Carson, I'll palletize your servers and I'll give you 4 seats. And that's what happened. We just drove all our stuff over there, flew over. For 2 weeks, the crusty warrant officers were like, why do I have to find housing for these 22-year-olds? 2 weeks. But after that, we earned our keep. They're like, I know why they're here.
You were over there?
I didn't go on that trip, but Matt Grimm, who is one of the co-founders of Anduril, was working for me at the time. He went over on that trip. Greg Barbaccia, who's now the federal government CIO, he was one of their first guys on the ground in Balad.
But you've been over there.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
It was eye-opening. I mean, most of my time I spent at Leatherneck, so in Helmand, working with the Marines.
Nice place.
Yeah,
I've been there.
Dicey spot. But
What year?
That was 2012, or 2011. 2011.
What does it say about a system when the people closest to danger are the ones begging for better tools, while those in charge resist to protect their processes? The early Palantir deployments were driven by urgency on the ground, not strategy from the top. And that tells you everything. Real innovation doesn't come from boardrooms or 5-year plans. It comes from the edge, where results matter more than roadmaps.
No shit. I was there around that time. Interesting. So tell me about it. How did that experience go for you?
I mean, we would have these, it's like a cup of motivation undersells it. It's like a water tank of motivation. You have these people, they come back from mission, they tell you what happened, they tell you their ideas, their feature requests, and you just have unbounded energy to code right there. You're just in a plywood little setup writing code, and okay, I'm going to have something better for you for tomorrow. And you just do that again and again. That the whole product development lifecycle. That was really, I was the first forward deployed engineer at Palantir, which investors hated because they thought it was a service business. It's not how you're supposed to do software. Everything about it was wrong to them, but it was so clearly right for our users. Of course you need the person who actually knows how to build the product sitting forward in the tent with the people doing the work, so that you can observe not what people in headquarters think the software needs to be, but the empirical reality on the front of what is missing. What could make this person more successful on the next mission than the prior mission? And if you do that for long enough, you just build this deep understanding of everything that's broken in the world, everything that sucks about their experience, everything that makes them more likely to come back as a team together. And it's also, by the way, how you stay, there's lots of jobs coders can take, but this is, it is an addiction to the motivation. Your sense of purpose is unbounded.
Can you imagine a VC-backed engineer writing code at 2 a.m. in a combat zone because a warfighter needed a new feature the next day? That's not software as a service. That's software in service. Palantir's whole ethos came from this deep-rooted belief that proximity to the mission builds better products. Investors might not have understood it then, but that's why their tech still resonates today.
Man, I love that way of thinking. I mean, I think like that just doing the podcast, which, but, I just, and I find whatever sector I'm operating in, business, military, I mean, there's always this box that they want you to think inside of. And people say, well, think outside of the box. I think, what box? There is no box to think of. And so I'm always looking for ways to innovate this and to not go by the typical roadmap that everybody expects you and wants you to follow. And you guys nailed it.
Well, to take credit away from us and give it to our customers, I think, first of all, this kernel is absorbing a lot of risk by kind of bending some, I wouldn't say breaking, but bending some rules and going against the system. And that was the beginning of a much longer fight. As that became successful, more and more people, the first thing they do when they would deploy would put in an urgent operational need statement to get Palantir because what they had wasn't working. And, some of those people did suffer career consequences for doing the right thing and doing that. And you knew you had to deliver for them. But the other part of it is really without their partnership. It's like the good ideas don't come eating strawberries in Palo Alto, right? They come on the fire cells of Djibouti and the factory floor of Detroit, where you can see firsthand what's happening and not. And that's all of the inspiration, all of the creativity. It comes from that environment. I think now this methodology has become more commonplace. People talk about forward deployed engineering. Companies are building around it. And I think it's great because I would say a critique of the software industrial complex is, if software is so great, why does nothing seem to work? Why are doors falling off planes? Why is it, why is there so much fraud in our government system? Like, we should be looking really hard at this. And I think it's because we've just been doing it wrong. We haven't been holding ourselves accountable to the primacy of winning. It doesn't matter what box of software you thought you were going to make, everyone living inside that box. Does it work? Doesn't matter. What could you change so that it worked better tomorrow? And are you impatient enough to go drive that change? And a lot of that comes down to institutionalizing rebellion. There was nothing that headquarters was going to tell our engineers in the field that would make them better at coming up with the next feature. Like, that was going to come out of their own crazy creative ideas being really right next to the problem. So my job is to support them in doing that to the greatest extent possible as we continue to build the company. So the machine doesn't crush them, the machine encourages them. And that's led to this philosophy at Palantir that we are not a factory, we're an artist colony. Like, my job is to find Dali and Monet, and don't do stupid things like yell at Monet to paint more like Dali. Like, each of these people are unique artists. And my job is to get out of their way, make sure other people stay out of their way, provide as much room as possible, and help them, just like an artist. It's not like every piece of art is better than the last one. You go through waves and cycles and just create the environment that allows them to do their best work.
This is where Palantir truly sets itself apart. They didn't just embrace the impossible, they thrived in it. The idea that engineers can be artists and not just cogs in a machine makes all the difference. This approach, where creativity, risk-taking, and real-world application come together, has been the driving force behind their evolution from a small startup to an industry-defining force. Their success wasn't just about building tech, but about creating an environment where people could push beyond limits.